Welcome to the FMCG podcast. Make sure you're following us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us out. Enjoy the show. Hi everyone, thanks for watching and joining us. Thanks for tuning in and listening. This is the FMCG podcast and we are Consumer Hub, and today we have Phil on the show from Blanco Niño, and we're going to be talking all things tortilla and tortilla chips and getting into the story of the business, Phil's story, and hearing all about it. So thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Phil. I'm really genuinely excited to record this with you. And me and Phil have just been having a little chat about some of the products and some of the history on them. And we want to get into more of the detail on that for you guys as well that are listening. But Phil, could you just give us a bit of a headline into you, your story in the business, just so that our listeners and watchers, I guess, know a little bit more about your story and where you're coming from?
Philip Martin, from Ireland. Obviously, Ireland isn't famed for its historic center of authentic Mexican corn tortillas and tortilla chips, which is what we produce in Blanco Niño, based in Tipperary in Ireland, in the new Latin Quarter there. So, I'm from Dublin. I grew up on an organic farm in Dublin. Food was always a very big feature and big presence in my life. And then we can get into it, of course, but set up a company called Blanco Niño, which is a traditional tortilleria, and basically making what are arguably or empirically some of the best corn tortillas and tortilla chips in the world now, out of a rural Irish, farming town. So it's kind of a quick intro, Rich.
Thank you. In the Latin Quarter as well.
Yeah, well, the Latin Quarter tends to be the four corners of our factory, I think. But yeah.
That's fair play though. You got to start somewhere. So how does a guy from Ireland that's from farming background get this into tortilla chips? Like, what was the wormhole you went down to get to this point?
Well, I think by my nature, I go down quite a lot of wormholes or rabbit holes, whatever you want to call it. But I'm very curious by nature. But what happened, I would say, is that I had maybe a fairly fortuitous or whatnot wander around the US and Mexico. I thought tacos were bloody amazing. I was like, I just love a bloody taco, and I love the idea of sitting in a taqueria.
Yeah.
But no one making good quality corn tortillas to make tacos. Obviously, tacos are made with corn tortillas. Most commonly, some people make them with wheat tortillas as well, and then burritos are most commonly made with wheat tortillas. I loved the idea of setting up a taqueria. I came back to Ireland, realized that there's no one making corn tortillas to make tacos. Didn't want to give up on this idea of setting up a concept, a restaurant, Mexican restaurant concept. So I was like, I'll launch a burrito bar. Wheat tortillas are like very readily available, and so went about that. Business went really well, but about a year and a half, 2 years in, I was like, had this scratch or itch to kind of try this taqueria concept, and I was like, making these bloody corn tortillas can't be that difficult. So I went back to Mexico and I spent a while learning how to grow the corn, the different varieties, how to harvest, store, identify, how to cook and grind the corn through the traditional process known as nixtamalization, and then came back and I met this farmer who told me that corn was the perfect replacement crop for a thing called sugar beet. I'm not sure if you've ever heard about sugar beet, Rich, have you?
I have done actually. Yeah, I've got pals in farming, so I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, so sugar beet was a very big industry. It's basically what all the sugar in Ireland, and I imagine probably the UK as well, was made from for a long time. And then the subsidies were removed quite abruptly, which basically shuttered that kind of sugar industry, and to the point where a lot of sugar beet that was left in the field basically went, meldy and whatnot. But anyway, it was a big kind of cultural scar on the Irish rural landscape in a way.
Yeah.
So when I was told that we could grow corn and it would be a perfect replacement crop for sugar beet, and a lot of my family were involved in growing sugar beet, I was like, well, hey, I can Phil can make his corn tortillas, he can have his tacos, and the family can grow the corn to make,
I love it.
said corn tortillas.
All in the Latin
So it was like the
Quarter.
stars that, yeah. So it was like the stars that aligned of sorts. And unfortunately, we try to grow the corn, but unfortunately, actually, the type of corn required for making like really high quality corn tortillas isn't really suitable for the Irish climate, I'm afraid, or British. We're just not quite. It's not quite hot enough, long enough in the field
Yeah.
um, to kind of get there. So yeah. So anyway, we launched a crowdfunding campaign. We raised more than double what we were initially seeking to launch the factory, launch the tortilleria. That ended up being about probably 10% of what we actually needed. Um, and but we managed to raise the balance, and we got the banks involved and all this, and launched the factory in uh, August, September 2015. Initially like selling to like a few restaurants and
Did
whatnot,
you have
and
any
like
orders before you got the funding in from banks and other sources?
no, not really. Like it's like thinking back now,
Wow,
it
that's
was like
incredible. You didn't
okay,
like manufacturing anyone else's kit to begin with. Yeah.
no, well, like no one was doing it. No one could do it.
Mm.
Like it's you know, I feel like I've got an army of guardian angels of some sort, looking out for us on occasion. The amount of things that kind of just bounced our way, plenty haven't, but a lot of things have, or enough things have, I guess. But even like I remember looking back now to the bank application, I can't believe we actually got funding, how we really got, a loan off the bank. Like I remember we were actually part of this accelerator program that was a collaboration between AIB and Bank of or AIB being the bank, and then the Irish Times. And at the last stage, you're on stage and you're presenting to this oratorium of people. And anyway, the head of the business banking was one of the judges at the final stage, of which there was a prize.
Yeah.
And we had an application in with the bank for a few hundred grand to, for the equipment and whatever else, and to complement the investment we'd raised and the grant funding we'd raised and all sorts. Anyway, I quite, probably very cheekily in hindsight, basically thanked the bank for their incredible support. How we wouldn't be able to have started the company without them, and we really approved them, approving our application and getting us going and whatnot, of which they had done none of the above. Uh, so, so I remember like the approval came through like a week later, and when my bank manager, very kind of well, he thought it was pretty funny, but he was like, I'm not sure if that had anything to do with it, what you did that night on that stage, but it probably did. But whatever you do not do it again, because you'll be shot next time. Basically,
Yeah,
joking, of
yeah.
course, and but yeah. So just no, we didn't have any customers. My restaurant was going to be the first customer, with a few people who were talking about like buying the product.
And were you running the restaurant full
But like,
time whilst you're doing all this, or did you
yeah,
have a team running the restaurant for you? Or
I had a big team, but like, nature of the restaurant business is incredibly hands-on, Um, and yeah, so just yeah, it was an incredibly intense period. Especially is what you're kind of getting at, between launching a
mm,
tortilla factory, finding customers, and the nature of the product. People didn't understand what bloody corn tortillas were.
yeah,
They were put in the same box as wheat tortillas, and wheat tortillas, you can consume straight out of the pack, whereas corn tortillas need to be heated and cooked basically again prior to use. And so there was a lot of education, and it was painful. It was really painful for a long time. It really felt like we were just, absolutely smashing our head against the wall. And like the nature of the product also meant that um, businesses couldn't set up in the same way we couldn't really set up a taqueria without being able to buy, corn tortillas.
mm,
So availability of the product was also the genesis of a lot of taquerias. So a lot of
interesting.
taquerias
Yeah,
set up because they actually had available ingredients. So if you didn't have the ingredients, some guys were making like tortillas with like maseca or corn flour, but like it's not really, it wouldn't be my approach to it. And it wasn't something that could really scale, or a taqueria could be worked off,
Yeah.
in most cases. So yeah, no, it was a big bloody gamble, and like I don't think it's a surprise, or shouldn't be a surprise. It was to me, because I think I'm perennially optimistic, but um that like setting up a traditional tortilleria in rural Ireland, um, with no population of taquerias and people familiar with tacos or corn tortillas, it should be no surprise that that was incredibly difficult, and it bloody was. My God, So,
So do you?
but yeah,
So you're obviously selling in like mainland UK now. Was that a pivot that you did quite early on, or did you just focus on local Irish market for a long time?
no, no, it was very clear from day one that this was not going to be just a domestic market,
Yeah,
Irish market thing. Like we sell across 17 European markets now,
amazing.
and we're in the Middle East as well. So, no, like the market for premium corn tortillas was always going to be a small market, but across many,
Mm,
say, market territories. So that I was under no illusions that this would be an Irish market thing. It was from day one. It was like we need to get into as many European markets, as many
yeah,
wholesale partners, as many restaurant chains as we can, and like we now are the like we work with Chipotle quite recently for like
yeah,
their tortilla chips now, and tortilla and Oaxaca as well in the UK. And it's interesting because all of these guys have taken a pretty big hit to move over to a much more expensive product by
mm,
working with ourselves. And it's been quite well. There's been a few very compelling, I guess, case studies which we've kind of shared with these guys, wherein people increase the price point of their, say, tortilla chips on the menu
yeah,
to kind of what they call margin maintain, to bring on a higher quality proposition. And not only do they obviously revenue goes up with a higher price point, you'd assume, unless sales completely drop off, but like the number of actually, or the rate of sale, or the volume of sales goes up in
mm,
addition to obviously a higher cash margin. So it's an absolute no-brainer. So basically more people go with a higher quality proposition
yeah.
than
Makes
a
sense.
cheaper, lower quality proposition. So
That's fascinating. What I guess this kind of builds into just what you shared about some of the challenges. I mean, did you have critics sort of say to you, come on, Phil, there's no space for more tortilla chips out there? I guess not understanding the difference between what you were doing and mainstream stuff out there. Did you have any naysayers? Did you have to deal with them, or were people pretty supportive?
so many,
Yeah,
so many, an incredible amount. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like it's oh my God, it's yeah. There's obviously so many people have different sayings for this, and like I knew that the proposition would work, despite everyone telling me that Irish people don't like bloody Mexican food, or what is a jalapeno or a jalapeno or whatever. It's like it's yeah, no, it was very tough, and even like raising investment, because like we've got an amazing investors in the company now, but like we've we must have met hundreds, if not more, like in the thousands of people between crowdfunding and
yeah,
non-crowdfunding to like raise that there were capital required to build out a manufacturing facility. Like it's not a small facility anymore that we have there. It's not like it's a really impressive, operation we've built, and something we're incredibly proud of. But it required an extraordinary amount of, I guess, like almost just thick neck, um, to just get that many no's and somehow still bloody go. And I think more sensible person may have actually given up and just gone, what, fuck it, it's not worth it,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
screw
yeah.
it. But no, look, we got a lot of people who said that Mexican food was just not really for the Irish. We had a lot of people who thought that like we were going to go into a category that was just, had the full spectrum of offering when it came to say tortilla chips, or then even
Yeah.
tortillas. It's like, well, there's already corn tortillas on the market, and but you have that, but you almost need an almost delusional level of self-belief or belief in the product, if not yourself. You know, there was plenty of occasions where you're kind of going, bloody hell, like, am I right and everyone's wrong? Um, that kind of odds are slightly against me here
Yeah.
with the sheer number of people who have taken the other side of that, bet. So, but bloody here we are now.
And for people
We're
listening,
almost
watching
10 years there now.
that don't
Mm.
understand the difference between like wheat tortillas, corn tortillas. Can you just give us a quick run through on what makes Blanco Niño special? Because when we got the products through and we tried them and reviewed them recently, they are exceptional. Like the back of pack is super educational, and there's all kinds of interesting words like nixtamalization on there. But just give people a run through if they're not familiar. Like what makes them special in terms of the actual product makeup itself.
So look, of course, I'll say there's a lot, but in its most fundamental, it's just how the product is made and the type of ingredients. So like, look, think of it this way: most tortilla chips might take like 35, 45 minutes to make.
Yeah.
If they're rehydrated corn flour, and like that's probably being generous in terms of time to make. Whereas like, so you're rehydrating, or you're getting flour mix, you're putting water into it, you're baking, you're frying, but it's a continuous process. Whereas we mimic the traditional way of making corn tortillas, which is a 3 day long process. So you're bringing in whole white regenerative corn, blue white and blue corn. You're cooking for about an hour. You're steeping for 16 hours. You're then volcanic stone grinding that like wet cooked corn into a corn dough called masa. You're then taking that corn dough and you're shaping and baking into like tortillas, or like
Mm.
round circles, let's say wraps, corn tortillas. You're then letting those tortillas rest overnight or equilibrate. And then once they're rested and partially dried out, they're like cut and lightly fried and made into tortilla chips. And like that, like long steeping time in like the vats with water, that like is really amazing and essential for the flavor development. The long, the making them into tortillas rather than like triangles in a continuous production process,
Yeah.
makes the mouthfeel and the crunch just that much better, as does the overnight equilibration or resting of the tortillas. So like it takes a bloody long time. Like it's 3 days versus
Mm.
45 minutes or whatnot. And then like there's so many things with like whether it be the regenerative corn or the quality of whether it be we were talking about the amaranth beforehand
Yeah.
or the likes of the salt that we're sourcing or the corn. Yeah, it's just like
And
it's
so
not one thing.
just to pick up on, did you say regenerative core? Ah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that's actually it's been one that's been in the tank for a long time that we've been trying to work on for a long time. So like I mentioned just before we started about the farm in Ireland and so on, and
Yeah.
how um, very early doors in the business, much of our ethos and mission and aspiration was around like being quite um, field to fork,
Mm.
growing our own corn, working with farmers, and there was the mission was quite wrapped up with that. And then when we couldn't grow the corn ourselves, and the Irish, component didn't work for that, it was a challenging moment. It was a very challenging moment because so much of my aspiration of the business and mission was wrapped in that. But we ultimately concluded that product excellence and making the best bloody quantities on the planet is a very good north star. Um, so we did that, but then a few years ago, I kind of just found myself feeling very proud of what we produced product wise, but just felt that we were absent of that big kind of hairy audacious goal, as our
Yeah.
American friends might call it. And
Yeah.
I really wanted to, bring that back And I've been, reading about and obsessed with like this idea of regenerative, regenerative economic systems outside of just regenerative corn or regenerative farming.
Yeah, same. Yeah,
And
same.
it's just such a no-brainer. It's like such a
Mm.
no-brainer. And it's like, because you have, there's an almost, there's a scary dynamic in the world today whereby, there's just like reduced consumption. And you're like, well, the only way you reduce consumption is by reducing bloody people. And we're not doing that. So
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
have to just change the engine of consumption to
100%.
being,
Yeah.
rather than being extractive, you can make it regenerative. And like basically the
Mm.
more, product and yeah, it's a product or economic good that's generated from regenerative systems, you're basically improving the environment through consumption rather than actually, destroying or extracting from the environment.
Definitely.
And
Yeah.
that's a pretty bloody powerful switch. So a few years ago we were looking at this, and it's a really big challenge, and it's going to like we now have our corn certified, but it took a long time to like get farmers. Um, well, get even the certification bodies to be there. Like they were implementing regenerative practices around like min-till and so on. But there's a lot more to go, and
Mm.
like there's a lot of big, especially in the US, there's a lot of big challenges there to kind of to improve the agricultural systems, and we spend a lot of time out there with a lot of farmers. And some of the bigger challenges are just animal husbandry or animals is really important for regenerative farming. Like it's pretty important the cows like shit on the ground basically,
Yeah.
and put it in at least like that like that's basically dumping bacterial bombs off the ground that help the soil break down and
Yeah.
improve the fertility of the ground and the basically the bacterial content, and then you want to like see improvements in like fungal activity and earthworm count and
Mm.
water, all these different things. But we went out to visit a lot of bloody farmers in Illinois there, and you're like, there's no fences as far as the eye can see. So if you like have a lot of cows,
Yeah.
they're like, see you later. They're gone. So it's like,
God.
okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
how do these guys integrate like animals back into the landscape, which are pretty essential for like the improvement of the kind of soil biosphere and whatnot,
So
without
are you
spending
working with
millions
people
and
like
millions.
Joel Salatin and those types of guys and implementing like mob grazing in that context, or is this stuff that you're coming up yourself, or what's the sort of? Because it sounds like you're really involved in the
No, it's not.
actual setup of it.
I'm very conscious with these things of not being the person who basically has like notiony ideas with complete disconnection from like the how it's actually done. So
Mm.
like I was like, if we're going to ask like these guys to like this is like the North Star in terms of like regenerative outcome and like soil that's basically improving year on year,
Yeah.
and it's becoming there's more carbon drawdown, it's improving in terms of bacterial, fungal, earthworm, water retention, all these different kind of measures. And so I just want to make sure that we're going out, we're explaining where we want to get to, and as opposed to like pointing a finger and saying what to do, we're like, look, this is where we want to get to. How do we do this? How do you guys do this?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of, and like I come from a farming background, and I know there's a lot of what would be the word? Not I wouldn't say there's a lot of enthusiasm from a lot of different certification programs, because like they're so dictatorial
Yeah.
and prescriptive, and you're like the farmers know what the bloody hell they're doing. Like this is a generational thing, and there's a lot of stuff they instinctively feel very repulsed by the industrialization side of things and the intensification. So they know a lot of it. So it's just like trying to be reasonable and trying to like provide economic incentive to pay a premium for a crop that is meeting or encouraging or incentivize people to move over to different practices. So the gentleman you mentioned, no, I'm not like familiar with. Like I kind of keep ourselves to ourselves. We probably should try our best to maybe be more active in that world. But no, it's just a good. This is where we want to get to, and we work with the farmers that we work with, and that's it.
Very cool. That's amazing. Thanks for the walkthrough. And I think, am I right in thinking I read on the back of one of the packs that the stone that you use to grind the corn is stone from Mexico?
Oh yeah,
Tell us about that, because that again, those details, that makes me want to spend money as a consumer, because I don't like buying cheap crap. I want to buy stuff that makes me feel good, and the packets made me feel really good when I ate the stuff. In terms of not the packets inside the packaging, I'm talking about the story comes through. So just give people insight into the stone, because that was fascinating.
Yeah, I kind of forget about that at times, to be honest. But yeah, no, it's all like it's Mexican volcanic stone, and yeah, like there's been a whole like when I was out in Mexico, a lot of the time I was there, I was learning how to carve basically stones, and there's so many different ways of actually carving the stones to get like different textural outcomes in terms
Yeah,
of like the granularity. And you want like in the corn, you want like a mixture between like really fine particles and really big particles, or not big, but just more coarse granular particles for like corn tortilla chips, whereas soft tortillas you want it to be as fine as can be. But yeah, we bring in the stones from Mexico. We sharpen them on site every week. We've got like
nice.
quite a few different sets just for the products. So yeah. It's pretty key to develop the textural kind of profile that we want in the product.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So what I guess, I mean, thank you so much for giving us a big overview of the story there. In terms of your role now, like what do you love about your role as an entrepreneur? Like what gets you out of bed in the morning?
Um, just the new, I guess, the kind of the next horizon is always exciting. We're like the regenerative piece, and that side of it's very exciting for myself personally. It's just it feels like a very hopeful area of the
Yeah,
world when so
certainly.
many people are so bloody negative. Yeah, so um, that's exciting. Like I'm across everything in the company. Like we're more than doubling our production output at the moment. So we're like there's a lot of um, new equipment and new floor space, and there's a lot of new customers. Like we just launched with Whole Foods and Co-op in the UK. We're launching with Sainsbury's in I guess next week. So there's a lot there. But I'm across everything. Like I often call, I jokingly now, but like this role that I have is like the distillation of shit. It's basically the worst problems that everyone in the company experience, come to me if they can't solve themselves. So it's yeah, I'm across everything at the moment. The team has become much bigger, so there's less need to be involved in everything, and I probably need to get better at standing back a bit more over time. But the exciting bit is just it's the kind of the new products, the new customers, the new expansion to the factory. These things, it's we're in a very fun and exciting place right now. Like it feels like we've spent, well, it's almost 10 years, but like the first 7 years really just like hitting our head against the wall,
Yeah,
iterating product constantly, constantly trying to like get better and build revenue and customers and understanding and capability. And we now find ourselves in a situation where we're I think it's empirical really. Like we're producing one of the best corn tortilla chips on the planet, in Clonmel and Tipperary of all places,
yeah,
and in Ireland, and it's an exciting place to be. It's an exciting place to be.
yeah. What's next then? I know you mentioned retail listings, and I think I saw on the website it's not just tortillas and chips now. You're doing some salsas too. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got a partner that we're working with for some salsas. They're we did like a soft launch, kind of trial launch, and we're going to be kind of doing a proper launch later this year is the plan.
Yeah,
But probably like everything we do, this the amount of time that kind of goes into the development process is just it's very extensive. So with the salsas, like most salsas in Europe are historically made like, soup, whereas to make a really good salsa, you need to like fire roast your, say, tomatoes. There's a whole piece around that, and like you wouldn't believe like the subtle differences between like like say garlic, for example, that's fire roasted for just a bit too long, and all of a sudden it becomes this horrendous flavor. So there's
Yeah,
all of these little development things that work through that are super exciting and fun and whatnot. So that's coming in the track pretty fast at the moment.
that's very cool. How do you feel about sugar? So let me just unpack it slightly. You mentioned sugar beet earlier. One of my bugbears is, I mean, I love food, but everything's just packed full of sugar, and it really, really like gets on my nerves that like people have this idea and they're like, okay, we want to make this authentic thing that like represents local cuisine, and then by the time it actually gets to the consumer on the shelf, it's just got loads of sugar in it. And I think that because I've like over time I've been eating less and less sugar, eating more and more whole foods, and me and my wife are a bit crunchy now and trying to avoid all the nasties. So when we find something that's convenience food and it is low in sugar, it's like, oh gosh, we can actually taste the food. But I can imagine, I also get it because I work with so many food companies that, the sugar's in there for a reason, because it helps with the shelf life and it helps with the palate that people have got. Like how do you sort of get that balance between not letting sugar just kind of wreck the creative vision that you've got something that's going to really actually taste like food?
So what do I think of sugar and its place in the kind of the world of food at the moment, really?
Yeah. I'm just interested in
Um,
your take, because you're obviously like really driven to get
yeah,
authenticity.
it's not good, but like not all sugars are created equally, at all. You like honey is
Mm,
sweet,
true.
but like honey like has a completely different impact when it hits the old stomach,
Yeah.
than say corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup. Not to be, um, not to be confused with just whole corn, and good quality corn that's been cooked properly. But um, no, like sugar's not a good thing. Like you don't need to go too far down any rabbit holes to kind of realize what happened with sugar and fat and salt, and like how, saturated fats are not the, boogeyman that
No,
they were made
definitely not.
out to be over the course of the last, few decades. But it's amazing how many people like still, even with salt, like salt is quite an important part of your diet, and you people trying to remove salt and remove saturated fats, which are really critical for basic, forming of new cells and,
Yeah.
cell membranes and whatnot in the body. So yeah, I don't. Um, I generally find when like sugar is poured into a product, it's a cost, mechanism to like make something hit a price point. But then like have the HFSS
That's it.
stuff, but even their stuff is like very, yeah, it's like there's a lot of things being done in the world of like food and agriculture and whatnot at the moment just don't make a whole lot of sense, because like even within the HFSS stuff, it feels like they're demonizing fat, and they're not
Yeah.
they're like, no matter what, they're not like making distinction between the type of fat. And then like in Ireland, and I think it's the same in the UK as well, you have this thing whereby we're like, trying to get farmers to stop bloody, having cows
Yeah, it's
and
crackers.
reducing herd sizes.
Yeah.
And you're like, mate, like Irish farming is probably as close at scale to like regenerative, maybe not quite, but like the animals spend most of the year in the fields, mostly
Yeah.
green grass. If you did a full carbon cycle, like there's an amazing piece around like how there's a regenerative farm in I think it's Seattle, White Oak Pasture is very famous, really incredible work. But they use the same audit company from memory. Correct me if I'm wrong. Someone might know better. But as like the guys who had like Impossible Burger, and then I think it was Beyond Meat, and then like a
Oh
factory
yeah.
farm beef,
Yeah.
and they found that like obviously the factory farm beef had the highest carbon, footprint,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
the other ones were like less. But then you had the bloody farm beef burger was actually carbon negative because when you did a full carbon cycle,
Mm.
the land was actually sequestering carbon from the air. So then you're going, wait a second, in Ireland, okay, so we're telling everyone to like remove the cows, and then all of a sudden the beef, say gap is being met by beef that's been brought in from areas or places in the world that has like a massive mileage on it and
Yeah,
is not anywhere near as, and you're like, we're just doing silly things
yeah,
that are
yeah,
not
yeah.
joined up. But look, maybe it's they're kind of going, well, it's very difficult to make these systems, so like a simple dumb rule is better than a complex, system. But um, bit of a tangent there, if you're rich.
No,
But
it's good. I love it. That's
yeah,
that's what this podcast is about. I mean, the regen thing. I'm fascinated. I did a great podcast with Amy and Jeff over at Hunter and Gather, and their brand is amazing. Looking at the importance of animal products in our diet. We are apex carnivores, basically. Well, apex omnivores, but our bodies are designed around needing animals. I just think that the partnership between animals and humans has just been broken down by modern life so much. And yeah, like per your point, I think templated solutions are not going to work. Like having chat to lots of people and read about it, like the stuff that seems most authentic and actually building a bridge between our modern life and something that's close to what people have as a notion of sustainability. It genuinely feels like it's people that are like ideators that just set off on this journey. They know where they want to get to and they're figuring it out humbly rather than coming in with this big, heavy-handed, template cookie cutter legislation that just wants to squeeze. Because often what I find is when you follow the money, and that's often what you need to do, isn't it? You follow the money on some of these big templated initiatives from government. It's about tax, isn't it? It's about leveraging more cash off someone somewhere. And it's suddenly retail suppliers are paying more to have their stuff kind of branded up on main shelf. They're paying for more in-store media because they can't advertise on gondola end, and it's like it seems to work for the big supermarkets, it's no surprise they're in favour of the HFS stuff. That's just me being cynical.
No, well, like no, I've experienced it. Follow the money is usually a good template for figuring out what's going on in the world. But yeah, I think a lot of the time as well, like I was invited to go to Davos there by a friend this year. It was a very interesting experience. It was quite funny because I was there and obviously it's quite tricky to get there and to be there and whatnot. And she's doing incredible things. She's like raising like a fund to basically 50 million to buy back land in the Amazon, and then they're putting it into trust and giving it to the tribal leaders to like basically be custodians of it.
Cool.
Really cool. But so she was there and she's asked me to come along and just provide some company while she was doing her thing. I was kind of wandering around, just having the chats, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Fuck all, really, to be honest. I'm just having a bit of a wander." And and like I was getting to chats with people about like this, that, and the other, and I realized that like most of, and like it actually kind of filled me with inspiration, counter to what most people might think, because I realized that most people, just want to get home and see their kids and look good in the eyes of their friends in terms of achieving, things of reputation and career progression and so on. And that like most of the time you have policymakers just listening to the last seemingly, sensible person in the room. Unfortunately, the people who are putting forward, policy solutions are often maybe not the most, well intended, perhaps, not always. And I was like, you know what? I can work with that. I can work with that because if people are just looking for solutions and you can articulate your way to a better solution, maybe naively, but I think that's not a bad outcome. It's whereby you can go and you can convince people that there's a better way to kind of put this jigsaw together, and you can galvanize enthusiasm and support around finding a better way to put this little system of kind of an economy or whatnot together. I think that's a really cool thing to give mental cognition and thought to and space to.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. That's a yeah, nice positive loop back into food being a force for good, which it is, and it should be. Yeah, definitely. So I guess a lot of people that listen to the show that they reach out to, and the feedback they give is they listen to it because it gives them inspiration for their careers. So if let's say there's somebody out there, they're a national account manager, they're in marketing, maybe they're in product development, and they've listened to this story, they're really inspired by Blanco Niño and think, I want to work for a purpose-led, entrepreneurial outfit like Blanco Niño. What advice would you have for them to get match fit for the type of environment you're in?
To set up a business or to work in the type of
I guess
like a
probably
company
to
like
work
Blanco Niño?
in a business like Blanco Niño, because a lot of people maybe setting up a business is something they think about in the future, or they know they still need a bit of learning first. Like, how do you think people can, or how and what do you think people need to do to get themselves ready to move from something that's more corporate into something that's more purpose led and entrepreneurial?
Um, well, you certainly you can't like put yourself in a silo. You can't be unwilling to like basically get stuck into everything in a company, because when you're a small team, the nature of it is you end up doing almost every job at some point if people
Yeah,
are in or out, or there needs to be a kind of a um, there needs to be an enthusiasm and excitement around having a broad involvement in a company. Because we're still a small company, relatively speaking. Like, we're only like 55, 60 people. So, um, but getting ready, like, I think, uh, I think you just need to have an appetite um, for kind of maybe radical responsibility or accountability
yeah,
in, like, embracing a task and wanting to kind of see it the whole way through. But I think the people who are even querying this or having that question of like how do they get into that space, they're probably already there. Anyone who, like, people who are not maybe contented in a more hierarchical organization, probably they like the idea of being involved in tasks from genesis through to execution. They probably like that, or desire that. So there's no way of preparing yourself beyond just doing it. You can maybe think about it and go, am I like, am I mentally, or am I kind of on board to like have this kind of broad responsibility, or kind of roll with the rough and tumble of moving stuff moving every day. And but I don't really see like there's no like magic sauce to be in
yeah.
a company. I don't think it's just like Blanco Nino. We have our what we look for in people in terms of culture and character traits and capability, and we've a pretty specific recruitment process around making sure we're the right company for the people who we're hiring, and vice versa. All of these things are two-way streets. It's very important that they're right for us as much as we're right for them. So
Makes sense. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, yeah. Just I guess building on from that, for anyone that's maybe they want to go self-employed and they want to set up a business, what advice would you have for somebody if they're thinking about setting up a business and doing something different?
um, I think I think there's a lot of people who have been in long careers, um, especially in corporates. They kind of buy into the kind of fallacy of maybe a great idea or a great plan of execution.
Yeah,
And that can be such a millstone around the neck of someone, of people, um, because, like, I often say that, look, it's very important to know where we're going, and we have a very clear idea where we're going, and ultimately what the destination is in terms of, say, products we want to launch, and so on. So you need to know where you're going and what your mission is, but you can't obsess too much around every sequential step. Like, if you have a 10-step plan, oftentimes once you get to step like three of 10, like four, five, and six are completely different because of the outcomes of one, two, and three, you know? So it's important to just be super action orientated with a ultimate goal in mind, and just be willing to, like, duck and dive and change and iterate and move as as everything unfolds, and it will unfold. So I would say, you have a product in mind, a category in mind, and rather than trying to like sequentially plan out it to the utmost minor details or whatnot, you just take massive levels of action and just be next action oriented. Like, stop trying to like think 20 steps down the road. Like, have an idea of where you're going, know where you're going, but just be action oriented. Just think of what's the next thing, because people have, like, I know so many people, it's the most common you know issue is paralysis, action paralysis, or to-do list paralysis. And they've so much to do, they don't know where to start, because they've thought about all these things need to happen one after the other. Just come back to the bloody next thing that needs to happen. Just focus on that, and then so
That's great. Yeah.
Next action orientation.
Great note to end on. I appreciate taking up a lot of your time. It's been an absolute blast, Phil. Really enjoyed hearing about the story and the journey, and thank you for all the advice that you've shared. And I guess for anyone watching, listening, I want them to go and find the products. Where can they buy them? Where's the best place for them to buy them, and also follow the business?
Yeah, so we're hello at Blanco Niño on Instagram. You can find us in Ocado, in Booths. My THs aren't great. Booths.
Works for
Yeah.
me.
Anyway, yeah. Then the likes of Co-op, we recently launched with Whole Foods. We recently launched with. We're in all those nice, wanky delis all over London and whatnot. And we're launching in Sainsbury's at the beginning of next month. So yeah, we're increasingly more nationally available, and then you can always, if you're struggling to find us, you can always get in touch. We're at blanco-nino.com, and we'll steer you towards your nearest friendly grocer, who will have loads of limited tortilla chips for you to
Are you
indulge
on
in.
Amazon?
We actually are as well. Yeah, we actually are
Yeah.
as well. Amazon UK. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. Thanks for that, Rich.
Yeah, I was
Fair play, yeah.
just thinking that might be easier. um, we
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we got the gear from Ocado, I think the last order. So yeah, but no,
Yeah,
it's been a
great
pleasure.
guys,
Thanks so much for your
Ocado. Yeah.
time. Yeah, really have enjoyed it. And yeah, if you're listening, watching, please reach out to Phil and the business. Thank them for their time and the insights shared. And we will see you soon. Take care, everyone.